exposing the wrongs, applauding the rights, dissecting the news without fear or favor, through factual and accurate stories and contents.
Corruption kills three things that makes a society.
Representing the interests of the people and giving them a voice. Voice of the People TV is here to stay towards building a fair society. VOP TV, Voice of the People Television, truly a voice for the people.
Ịghọtago? Igbo mụrụ nze m ọzọ, oge eruola o, ugo eberela na mgbagbu. Oge ndị Igbo na Voice of the People Television VOP TV esubirila.
Igbo mụrụ nze m ọzọ, kedu ka o si aga ya gaziere onye ukwu ma gaziere onye nta.
Onye nụ ya ka ọrụ ibe ya. N'ihi oke ịhụnanya anyị nwere maka ọdịmma Igbo niile, Voice of the People Television ewepụtala oke atụmatụ iji na-akpọkọ ụmụ Igbo ọnụ n'egwu ọnwa nke a kpọrọ oge ndị Igbo. Ebe a bụ ebe a na-adọwa okwu agba, na-akụzi ma na-azakwa ndị maara akwụkwọ. Anyị si na-asụ na omenala Igbo agaghị anwụ anwụ. Sonyere anyị n'oge ndị Igbo na Voice of the People Television ụbọchị ụka niile ma ya kwa elekere 8 nke abalị ruo elekere 9 nke abalị. Biko tọọ ntị n'ala ka ị nụrụ ya danda. Ugogbuzuo ọchake, Igbo na-asụ n'olu n'olu, olu ga-adịo, Igbo ga-adịo. Mgbagbazie ndị ya adị unu, ịghọtago? Igbo mụrụ nze m ọzọ, oge eruola o, ugo eberela na mgbagbu. Oge ndị Igbo na Voice of the People Television VOP TV esubirila.
Igbo mụrụ nze m ọzọ, kedu ka o si aga ya gaziere onye ukwu ma gaziere onye nta.
Onye nụ ya ka ọrụ ibe ya. N'ihi oke ịhụnanya anyị nwere maka ọdịmma Igbo niile, Voice of the People Television ewepụtala oke atụmatụ iji na-akpọkọ ụmụ Igbo ọnụ n'egwu ọnwa nke a kpọrọ oge ndị Igbo. Ebe a bụ ebe a na-adọwa okwu agba, na-akụzi ma na-azakwa ndị maara akwụkwọ. Anyị si na-asụ na omenala Igbo agaghị anwụ anwụ. Sonyere anyị n'oge ndị Igbo na Voice of the People Television ụbọchị ụka niile ma ya kwa elekere 8 nke abalị ruo elekere 9 nke abalị. Biko tọọ ntị n'ala ka ị nụrụ ya danda. Ugogbuzuo ọchake, Igbo na-asụ n'olu n'olu, olu ga-adịo, Igbo ga-adịo. Mgbagbazie ndị ya adị unu, ịghọtago? Igbo mụrụ nze m ọzọ, oge eruola o, ugo eberela na mgbagbu. Oge ndị Igbo na Voice of the People Television VOP TV esubirila.
Igbo mụrụ nze m ọzọ, kedu ka o si aga ya gaziere onye ukwu ma gaziere onye nta.
Onye nụ ya ka ọrụ ibe ya. N'ihi oke ịhụnanya anyị nwere maka ọdịmma Igbo niile, Voice of the People Television ewepụtala oke atụmatụ iji na-akpọkọ ụmụ Igbo ọnụ n'egwu ọnwa nke a kpọrọ oge ndị Igbo. Ebe a bụ ebe a na-adọwa okwu agba, na-akụzi ma na-azakwa ndị maara akwụkwọ. Anyị si na-asụ na omenala Igbo agaghị anwụ anwụ. Sonyere anyị n'oge ndị Igbo na Voice of the People Television ụbọchị ụka niile ma ya kwa elekere 8 nke abalị ruo elekere 9 nke abalị. Biko tọọ ntị n'ala ka ị nụrụ ya danda. Ugogbuzuo ọchake, Igbo na-asụ n'olu n'olu, olu ga-adịo, Igbo ga-adịo. Mgbagbazie ndị ya adị unu, ịghọtago? Igbo mụrụ nze m ọzọ, oge eruola o ugo eberela na mgbagbu oge ndị Igbo na Voice of the People Television VOP TV esubirila
ịgbamụrụ nzem ọzọ kerikosi aga ya gazere onye ukwu ma gazere onye nta
onye nụ ya ka ọrụ ibe ya n'ihi oke ịhụnanya anyị nwere maka ọdịmma Igbo niile Voice of the People Television ewepụtala oke atụmatụ iji na-akpọkọ ụmụ Igbo ọnụ n'egwu ọnwa nke a kpọrọ oge ndị Igbo ebe a bụ ebe a na-adọwa okwu agba na-akụzi ma na-azakwa ndị maara akwụkwọ anyị si na-asụ na omenala Igbo agaghị anwụ anwụ sonyere anyị n'oge ndị Igbo na Voice of the People Television ụbọchị ụka niile ma ya kwa elekere 8 nke abalị ruo elekere 9 nke abalị biko tọọ ntị n'ala ka ị nụrụ ya danda ugogbuzuo ọchake Igbo na-asụ n'olu n'olu olu ga-adịo Igbo ga-adịo mgbagbazie ndị ya adị unu ghọtago Igbo mụrụ nzem ọzọ oge eruola o ugo eberela na mgbagbu oge ndị Igbo na Voice of the People Television VOP TV esubirila
ịgbamụrụ nzem ọzọ kerikosi aga ya gazere onye ukwu ma gazere onye nta
onye nụ ya ka ọrụ ibe ya n'ihi oke ịhụnanya anyị nwere maka ọdịmma Igbo niile Voice of the People Television ewepụtala oke atụmatụ iji na-akpọkọ ụmụ Igbo ọnụ n'egwu ọnwa nke a kpọrọ oge ndị Igbo ebe a bụ ebe a na-adọwa okwu agba na-akụzi ma na-azakwa ndị maara akwụkwọ anyị si na-asụ na omenala Igbo agaghị anwụ anwụ sonyere anyị n'oge ndị Igbo na Voice of the People Television ụbọchị ụka niile ma ya kwa elekere 8 nke abalị ruo elekere 9 nke abalị biko tọọ ntị n'ala ka ị nụrụ ya danda ugogbuzuo ọchake Igbo na-asụ n'olu n'olu olu ga-adịo Igbo ga-adịo mgbagbazie ndị ya adị unu ghọtago Igbo mụrụ nzem ọzọ oge eruola o ugo eberela na mgbagbu oge ndị Igbo na Voice of the People Television VOP TV
Welcome to People's Voice on VOP TV, where we amplify the stories, struggles, and concerns of everyday Nigerians. I am Adefunke Jaisimi, your host, and today on People's Voice, we are tackling a pressing issue that affects every one of us, which is poverty. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has warned that Nigeria's poverty crisis is projected to worsen by 2027, painting a grim picture for millions of Nigerians already struggling to survive. Despite the government's claim of progress and increased revenues, so much that the 2025 budget had to be increased as a reflection of this heavy boost, the harsh reality on ground for Nigerians tell a totally different story. Although the World Bank's projection of 3.6% economic growth for Nigeria seems optimistic, but the International Monetary Fund's IMF warning that Nigeria's poverty crisis will worsen by 2027 highlights the complexity of the country's economic situation. Several factors contribute to this disparity, and a lot of Nigerians are concerned about unequal distribution of wealth in Nigeria, saying economic growth doesn't necessarily translate to poverty reduction if wealth isn't distributed evenly. And in Nigeria, the benefits of growth often concentrate among the elites, leaving the poor behind. Some have also raised the topic of inflation and rising costs, saying that despite economic growth, inflation can erode purchasing power, affecting the poor disproportionately, Nigeria's inflation rate has been a concern, and this has impacted the cost of living in the past few years, and we cannot take this away from the reality of people. And it's quite unfortunate that the disconnect between government efforts and the citizens' experiences is alarming, as citizens cannot relate with the economic progress the government constantly celebrates and put out every time to tell us that Nigeria is working. There's so much that is being done, but we are seeing it in papers, we are seeing it on the cover pages of the national dailies. As a matter of fact, yes, there was a reflection in the 2025 budget as it had to be increased, but many Nigerians are not seeing this. They cannot relate with this experience and are feeling left behind and forgotten. So today on People's Voice, we are examining the harsh reality of Nigeria's poverty crisis. We will discuss potential answers and spark meaningful conversations about how to build a more equitable and prosperous Nigeria. So today we ask that you please join us as we give voice to the voiceless, shine a light on the harsh realities of poverty, and explore ways to create a brighter future for all Nigerians. And because you are the most important part of our conversation, please call in or text us on 090-447-32605 or tweet us using the hashtag People's Voice on VOP TV. Do well to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Voice of the People TV and follow us across all social media platforms at VOP TV Live and make your voices heard. It's time to get real, informed, and engaged on People's Voice. It's time to go on a quick break. People's Voice will return shortly. Stay with us. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has indeed raised a serious concern about Nigeria's poverty crisis. But specifically, it's the World Bank that has warned that poverty in Nigeria will worsen by the year 2027 due to structural weaknesses. The IMF, however, expressed similar concerns, stating that rising poverty in Nigeria is overshadowing the gains from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's economic reforms. As the cost of living continues to rise, many Nigerians are struggling to make ends meet, with the poor bearing the brunt of the economic hardship. The IMF's warning is a wake-up call for policymakers to reassess their priorities and implement sustainable solutions to address poverty and inequality in Nigeria. So today, to discuss this very sensitive and pressing matter, I am joined by Honorable Felix Pascal Polevo, a renowned entrepreneur, politician, and public affairs analyst. Good afternoon, Honorable Felix.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure.
All right, many thanks for joining the People's Voice today. The projection of a worse poverty crisis in 2027 by IMF, according to them, is due to structural weaknesses. I mean, a lot of Nigerians might know this already, but this coming from IMF at this time, what are the key structural weaknesses facing Nigeria in your opinion?
Very much. One of the principal structural challenge we have is that even the people leading the economic team in this country don't even believe in themselves. Because most of the policies you see us implementing in this country economically are ideas that have been more or less infused into us by some of these international organizations. You find out that one of the topical issues of this administration is the removal of the fuel subsidy.
Right.
Yes, which the president did on the day he was inaugurated. In his inaugural speech, he said he has removed the subsidy fully. And painfully enough, all the three major presidential candidates, as part of their decisions when they were campaigning, they said if they make it to the Aso Rock, all of them agreed, be it Peter Obi, be it Atiku and President Tinubu, they all fully now that has really put in a lot of pains in the hands of Nigerians. And you know, the skepticism Nigerians have been having is the trust factor of the hands that will handle the proceeds of this subsidy removal. As beautiful as the policy is, you know, that is what every international organization keeps saying. So subsidy is the way to go. That has been the song on everybody's lips.
Right.
Subsidy is the way to go. We shouldn't always just be so concerned about depending on IMF, you know, World Bank to come up with an economic policy for us. As much as, yes, they have their presence here in one way or the other through some of their interventions and activities, but we should be able to believe in ourselves, look inward, think Nigeria, think of the peculiarity of our problems. We have a lot of these African countries that have done it. For example, the president of Rwanda, you know, even Ghana here, you know, they've come up with policies that they are economically, you know, relative to their communities, to their society, as against just what these guys from the West put forward for us, you know, as the way to go and the way to follow. So I think there is a link of believing in ourselves and looking inward. So more or less, it's like we're always just waiting. What will IMF say again?
Yeah, I totally understand the fact that our problems are peculiar to us, and I like the fact that you talked about how we shouldn't always look up to the IMF or wait for international bodies to tell us what to do, when to do it, and how to go about it. But the emphasis on the structural weaknesses is something that we should look into, because this has been categorized into economic, infrastructural, and governance issues. They've talked about our economic weaknesses, saying that we depend on oil for so long without diving gas transport, which we are just improving on. Talk about the Dangote refinery and some of the other local refineries that are already working. And also which has been highlighted as part of the structural weaknesses that is not helping us live in the reality of what the government is saying, because it looks like there's a gap between the government and the people. So the governance weaknesses are corruption and weak public action. I mean, if the government is saying we're making so much money, and for we Nigerians, we aren't feeling any difference, what exactly do you think that can be done differently? And on our own part, do you think that the people are also a problem?
Surely the people are. I think the poverty that has been put forward by lack of good governance in the country has so much affected the people that what we face so much now is the poverty of the mind from the part of the people. Because you'd find out that with the challenges we are facing in the country at the moment, the same people who put us in this mess are currently regrouping. And it is still the same for me and you, you know, that are now beginning to chant them and beginning to see them as angels and saints, and even giving them a consideration. I like what someone like Showere said. He said the only coalition he will be part of, the only coalition he respects is the coalition of the masses. And that is the way to go. It is about the masses coming together to realizing that these people have really put us in a lot of mess, that we need to come together and overcome this problem and get out of this problem. Now, this governance issue stems from the fact that 6 states in this country, if you check out the subvention they were receiving prior to 2023, it is higher compared to what they are getting now. It's lower than what they are getting now. By that I mean what they are getting now is higher than what they had before now. So it means that the subsidy removal has brought in more money to the states.
Exactly. But the citizens are not even feeling anything. Because if our governors are receiving more money, then who are we supposed to hold accountable?
The governors. So the citizens, the poverty of the mind of the people is affecting us more. The people are not holding their governors accountable. Do you know that sadly enough, there are even states in this country that have not even started paying 30,000 naira minimum wage up to today? And yet you will still find some people in those states writing commentaries, coming on the streets and hailing some of those governors, despite the fact that the federal government has given them more money. And this was the fear genuine minds in this country had about the removal of the subsidy. Indeed, there will be more monies in the hands of the governors, but we don't trust the hands that the monies will come through. Look at what the government has done with the grassroots, because the local government is a third tier of the government of our system. It is not a subset of the state government, but the governors have been frustrating the process. You see, every day, CBN keeps coming up with one idea or the other for the chairman to comply with. Oh, you have to bring an audited account. Oh, you have to find an independent auditor. You know, this one. And next month, they'll come up with another issue. They are just trying to drag and waste time.
That process.
Yes. This is a pronouncement of the Supreme Court.
Right.
It is not just an executive order. So why is the Supreme Court even silent on the fact that CBN has not? So what are the citizens doing? Can the citizens not stand up and hold the CBN accountable? Like, call them to order that what is the problem? Why have you people refused to start?
Praise some of the politicians that they are supposed to come together to fight against. Because poverty of the mind, like you've stated, is a very big one. No matter how much money you give to someone, if their minds cannot be cleansed, if they cannot think properly, then there is a problem. But in all, the government is who we get to face at all times. How can the government ensure that economic growth translates to improved living standards for all citizens? I understand that you've said that
Sincerity of purpose, number one. The government needs to be very sincere. They need to come clean, face the people, be sincere, be objective, not propaganda. Like sometimes when I listen to some of these presidential aides, you know, like we're not campaigning yet. It's time for governance. It's not time for campaign. It's not time to push blames. For example, you knew that this problem was on ground before you decided to contest.
yeah.
You know, so why are you coming now to be saying, oh, the past regime messed the country? It is because they messed the country that we went out under the scorching sun and voted for you, believing that you have the solution. So we did not vote for you to come and tell us what we know, which is that they messed the system. We know the system is already messed up. So if you practically have nothing to offer, as much as we believe that you had, then why not be honorable enough to just resign, as against pushing blames?
I think I agree with you on this one, because just yesterday on the show, we're talking about this same thing. The conversation was around the mysterious 18-day trip to France. And, you know, making excuse for the government seemed funny because it has become like a style. A government come in, blame the military that, oh, we just entered the Fourth Republic, give us time. The Fourth Republic began. We did 4 years, we did 8 years, a lot of irregularities. So much that even the presidential candidate at the time said that the election that brought him in was a total mess and embarrassment, and he was going to work to ensure that the electoral process is being reformed. Unfortunately, may the soul of the former president Musa Yar'Adua rest in peace. Jonathan came into office as vice president who had to become president. After 2 years became president, Nigerian people actually came out in mass to vote for Jonathan in 2011. And I don't think 2011, I don't even think he enjoyed the first 2 years of that election before the propaganda started, even though there were a lot of allegations of corruption and diversion of the national resources. But the reality still remains. The All Progressive Congress came into power because Nigerians were tired of everything that was happening at the time. And I remember their slogan vividly. They say change. And people wanted change. So it was quite heartbreaking to constantly remind Nigerians of how much failure the country had recorded before they came into office. And this is Ebola Ahmed Tinubu's administration, who boldly said that, Emilokon, and he said again that I know that the job is going to be tough, that nobody should pity him. So when Nigerians ask questions, as much as you have clarified the role of the presidency and the governors in all of these things and how much fundings they have now, but it feels like Nigerians, the level of exposure and education we have when it comes to governance, we feel like everything has to do with the president. And that is a major challenge because nobody goes after the governors or even the people in the Senate or their representatives as much as they do to the president. But maybe because the presidency is always vocal during elections and all. But do you think that any policy intervention would mitigate the poverty crisis in Nigeria?
Yes, surely I think one of the major issues that the present government need to work on is the insecurity in the country. You know, one of the structural challenges the World Bank has identified is the overdependence on oil.
Yeah.
Fine. So now you are supposed to have an alternative. That alternative would have probably been agriculture because we have vast land that has not yet been developed, you know, and is fertile. That agrarian spirit is in our people. You know, the disposition to go to farm and get what they will eat is there, you know, both at subsistence and commercial level. But the challenge now is that there are communities in this country that when you are striving to go out, you are just signing your death warrant. There is no assurance of you coming back home from the farm safe. It's either you are you know, attacked and seriously wounded or even killed. So until when if you fix the security situation now, you will see that a lot of people will have the confidence to go to the farm and the diversification of the economy will. Those who are able to produce from other sources outside the oil section, they will be able to have that sense of security. So many people's businesses are being burnt down because of insecurity. You know, people are being threatened in communities that probably is not their ancestral home. These are the kind of challenges we are facing in the country. A southerner who is doing business in the north does not have that full confidence to really relax, you know, give his best here and be assured that he can sink in his billions here in the north and then eventually nothing's going to happen. He can grow it because this is Nigeria and he is a Nigerian and he can do business and grow his business anywhere in the country. He doesn't have that kind of confidence. Likewise, the northern and the south. So the government needs to address this insecurity issue, restore that confidence in the people, because the economy will be moved by the people, not just the government.
Exactly.
The government is going to initiate the policies and programs. The people will drive the policies and programs, especially the private sector. So the government needs to bring in those policies that will give the private sector that sense of belonging. Give them, like, at some point, our darling Dangote was getting frustrated and saying he wants to even sell the refinery. Why? Because the government policies are choking. Instead of encouraging him, you know, because he has keyed into this, our refinery in Port Harcourt, you know, has been working on paper and propaganda for the past 2 years. Every government comes around, just like the Nigerian Air that Hadi Sirika launched, you know, that are used in flying to Lagos to come to your studio.
An international embarrassment.
You understand? So all those kind of things, the government needs to be proactive. Like we need to be very much rigid on these policies. It is not about propaganda any longer. And this government we're talking about is not just the federal government. State governments need to key into it. So the whole thing comes back to the people. Are you people not tired of suffering? Are we not tired of failed promises? For how long are we going to allow people to keep playing around with us? It's archaic, it's primitive, it's barbaric. It's a redundant way of thinking and reasoning. We need to step up. We need to fight those people. That is why I was telling some people recently. I said, these people trying to come up with a coalition recently. There are people that if they pass around my neighborhood, we should find stones and stone them.
So how do we fight? As much as we would not encourage violence, you've said that these are the people that we are supposed to come together and fight. I remember at the beginning of your conversation, you also emphasized on the fact that Nigerians enable these politicians. But how much strength do we have? What capacity do we even have as a people to fight the political class and the elite, looking at the fact that the way these political party structures are, it is difficult for a less population to infiltrate, and even when you get to be a part of the party, you might never be a delegate to any of their conventions, even if you stay 50 years in the parties, because of the way the structures are. And Nigeria is not a system that allows for individuals to contest for elections. So how do we fight this?
The greatest office in this country is the office of the citizen of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That office is bigger than the office of the president of the country. But we have not realized the worth of that office.
Do you think we've not realized it, or we have often compromised our values? Because it feels like for the people, it's more about who is in office now and what do I get. Once there's a government that favors you and you're directly or indirectly connected to, but at least you get something from, you see that the larger population feel like, it's going to get better. And at the end of the tenure of such people, another people start raising hopes again. So what do we do?
The basic thing is that the people, the elites have infused this challenge into the masses, and then the masses have not been able to discover themselves up to now. It's a tactical thing. Since 2023, a lot of them have abandoned the masses. Since clinching to power, they've forgotten about people. Come December this year, they will send rappers and branded bags of rice and accompany them with posters.
Right.
People have been subjected to poverty, that there are families that wake up not sure of the next meal and where it will even come from. There are families that have lived now for 5 days, 1 week, they've not cooked in that house. That is the extent of poverty the leaders have subjected people to. So now you will now find the father of that house, the mother or the children, when now a politician sends in these small materials, and the father of the house is invited for a meeting and has the opportunity of going back with a 2 kg or 5 kg bag of rice back home. He is now coming back home with that confidence of a father, because before now he used to just come timidly and just find his way. He doesn't even come home early. He waits until when the children are asleep. He will come in and enter, because he doesn't want them to cry and ask him for food. Then now eventually he has been invited. He comes to this rice. You see him in the broad daylight coming with full confidence. Are you not coming to collect? Are you not coming to welcome me home? He's coming with that confidence. And then if you go, a neighbor now comes around and says, this guy will not vote for him. He can even fight that person. Why? Because he feels this person now has made me to feel like a father. For over a week that I have just been hiding around from my family, I have been able to come back home now with confidence. My family is able to eat. But he is only thinking of that moment. That is the level of poverty of the mind the politicians have infused in the people. So he is not able to think that, okay, what will happen to him when that last grain of rice finishes? And even when you come around and ask him that question, even as you are passing by, you just ask him that question, you will see you as an enemy. So that is the kind of problem we have found ourselves. But we need a kind of mindset of what the Kogi people just demonstrated at Salah with Senator Natacha. When some of these people were against her, when they even came up with some kangaroo arrangements and policies and decisions, don't come in, this one, that one, when there were not even security threats, there were no security reports to indicate that there were problems in Kogi. But they just manufactured it to stop her. But the people defied all this, came out in their large numbers, demonstrated the love, that passion. That is the kind of spirit we want to be seen in the citizens.
Exactly.
That our common good is bigger than that of the microscopic few that are heading and leading the country in certain positions of authority. That we must stand together for what we want and for what we believe in. And so for the citizens, when you want to even contest, you must not go and, bury your ideas, some of your policies, your energy, your resources, and whatever in the PPP or APC or some of these major political parties. Today in the National Assembly, we have people who are from YPP. We have people from SDP in the National Assembly, and some political parties that are not so much national political parties per se. So when you can be able to, all you need is for us to agree and say, we want a Mr. A. We want our own. I've often told people, anything good for us without us is not good for us.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. The office of the Nigerian people is the biggest, bigger than the president's office or whoever finds their way into the corridors of power. But we need to go on a break now. So far, we've been talking about the harsh reality of Nigeria's poverty crisis, and we need to understand how these things work, how we can move out of this position. Projections like this is not even good for the mind, as Nigerians already have so much that they are dealing with. But stay with us, we will be back shortly. Many thanks for staying with us on People's Voice. Let's dive into the harsh reality faced by Nigerian citizens. So far, it's been a case of soaring inflation, prices of essential goods skyrocketing, eroding purchasing power. So it isn't about how much money you make now, but your purchasing power, how much can the money in your hand, how much can it get you, how much resources, how much value can it get you? There is also the epidemic of unemployment in Nigeria, and lack of job opportunities forces many people into poverty and desperation, which is one of the things that the political class take advantage of. We also have to deal with inadequate infrastructure, poor roads, erratic power supply. As a matter of fact, for production, for a better economy, we can't manage what we have when it comes to power supply in Nigeria. We can't even compete with other African countries that are doing well, let alone the Western world. And the limited access to clean water is alarming. Healthcare, many issues, things that are supposed to be basic ordinarily, things that Nigerians will get to japa, as they say, enjoy as basic things, are what Nigerians really have to pray, fast, and even need connections to have. There's a part of food insecurity also, where many Nigerians struggle to afford basic necessities, let alone eat nutritious food. For a lot of homes now, it's not even about balanced diets. They just want to eat something. And insecurity and violence has gradually become a norm. Citizens live in fear of kidnappings, banditry, terrorism, disrupting livelihoods. It's even not breaking, as it were, anymore when it comes to kidnapping, banditry, and terrorism in Nigeria. You see the cover pages filled with killings in different parts of the countries, and it's quite alarming and unfortunate that we're now at a point where the government gets to condemn calls for immediate action, but at the end of the day, much isn't done. So this gap, this wide gap between the government, the elite, and the common man needs to be filled up, because it doesn't feel like the people within the corridors of power understand the reality that a lot of Nigerians have to deal with. And despite government's claims of progress, many Nigerians feel disconnected from these efforts, because some of their concerns are revenue versus reality. Yes, in the news, we get to talk about it. We hear increased revenue. But for the regular citizens, for the everyday Nigerians, This increased revenue doesn't translate to improved living standards for most citizens. As a matter of fact, corruption and inefficiencies, many funds meant for development are often diverted, leaving citizens without essential services. We see lack of transparency and accountability. The government's actions, we hear that the federal government has released so much fund for state governors, but Nigerians are still hoping that the federal government will get to everybody. But that might not be possible because that is why we have different tiers of government, and very, very hard one for young people in Nigeria, limited job opportunities. As much as a lot of young Nigerians are exploring the global space, taking up remote job, the larger population are still suffering and job opportunities are limited. Economic growth doesn't always create enough jobs because this leads to unemployment and poverty. Nigeria's unemployment rate remains high, particularly among young people. We hear economic growth, but it feels like the growth is within the elite. So I still have with me my guest, Honorable Felix, and we will be talking more on this issue. Honorable Felix.
Sorry, there was a network glitch.
It's totally fine. It's what we're still talking about, Nigeria. So like I said, that despite the claims of progress, talking about revenue, increased revenue, many Nigerians still feel disconnected from this reality because our own reality is different from the reports we get. And some of these concerns are around revenue versus reality. What can be done? Because this gap is really, really wide. Can you hear me? Okay, we'll go on a quick break now. Honorable Felix, can you hear me now?
Now. Yes, I can hear you now. I can hear you now. Sorry.
All right. I said the increase in revenue, according to the government, is not the reality of Nigerians who are saying that they are not feeling this because the increase in revenue was so much that the 2025 budget had to be increased. So I'm asking, what?
Especially at the state level, are not giving that needed output or result. Because just as we earlier agreed, it's not a business of the federal government alone. That is why we have a three-tier of government, the state and the local government. So this is because the government, if it is concentrated at the federal level, the effect may take long to get to the grassroots. So, but now, these policies that will have a direct effect on the people need to come more from the state governments because they are more or less closer to the people since they have refused to allow the local governments to work for now. You know, so the state governors must initiate policies that are people-friendly, not just policies that will empower them and enrich them. Like let us outgrow this area where immediately after every out of 36 state governors, you know, we will see 20 always visiting offices and returning because of, you know, looting of funds at the state level and all whatnot. So those policies, for example, one of the major things that is biting hard on the people is the cost of transportation. The federal government must be able to see how to make our refineries work, reduce the cost of fuel. Because truly, this is one of the major things that is really because every other thing is on transportation. When the producer produces it from the point of production, he has to take it to the point of sale. When the cost of transport is high for him, he will still have to add up the price of the commodity. And that price of the commodity is going to be felt by the poor, you and I, most of whom are not even working, most of whom are not beneficiaries of the minimum wage of the federal government that have just been implemented by few people, most of whom are unemployed. A lot of them are underemployed. And so their take home at the end of the month is nothing to write home about in line with the current reality. So transportation, the Port Harcourt refinery, what is the issue about it? You know, I spoke about sincerity of people's area. What is the real issue about it? Can the government just come out clean and talk to us? Tell us that this thing can only work in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years. Fine, and let's start doing something about it. I'm sure if throughout Buhari era, they were working on this refinery, within 8 years, we would have had it back on track. And once the refinery is working, imagine if the Port Harcourt refinery starts production effectively, and then Dangote refinery is also there to complement. Surely we'll have some form of relief in terms of the cost of fuel and then the transportation cost. And by extension, you know, prices of commodities will go down. It is just transportation, because most of the rice that Nigerians are consuming, for example, the staple food we consume, are being produced here. They are not imported. That will say the naira to dollar effect. Most of these things are produced locally within the country. But because of the cost of transportation, a small distance that this farmer is supposed to just cover and pay 300 naira or 500 naira, he is now paying 1,500 or 2,000 naira. And so that product is supposed to sell for 500 naira and is now going for 2,000 naira, because he has to also have more money. Maybe he has gone out to go and sell granite. He will not be eating granite all throughout the year. He will need yam. He will need beans. Now the cost of yam and beans, which he doesn't produce, has increased. He will have to increase the cost of granite so that when he is going to buy yam, he can have the ability to buy the yam, and his children can eat the yam. And he is also considering that, okay, school owners have increased the school fees. Even federal government have increased school fees. So he will now have to look at, okay, that my child that is in school, I have to increase the price of this my commodity that I'm taking to the market so that I can be able to have a return that can pay my child's school fees, that can pay my house rent, that can be able to clothe us, you know, and attend to some of our menial needs that will feel like human beings. So these things.
Thank you very much, Honorable Felix. Thank you for sharing your valuable insights and perspective with us on People's Voice today. But in conclusion, this warning from IMF about Nigeria's worsening poverty crisis by 2027 is actually a wake-up call for all stakeholders. And as we discussed today, addressing poverty requires a multifaceted approach that involves government, private sector, and citizens' participation. And as we wrap up this episode of the People's Voice, we urge our listeners to continue the conversations. Let's hold our leaders accountable for addressing poverty and promoting economic development. Together, we can work towards creating a more equitable and prosperous society for all Nigerians. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, stay informed and engaged. I am Adefunke Jaisime, and I strongly believe in this project, Nigeria. Nigeria will be great again. Have a wonderful weekend.
From the views on the street
We go to bed empty hunger.
to the blaring horns of a hustling city, the loudest voices of the common man got a medium to be heard.
This particular administration, they were coming unprepared.
It's not a bad thing to renovate the president's lodge.
Through top-notch programming, unbiased reportage of news, sports, business, entertainment, and